All right. Good morning, Doug. We're back with more questions from members of our file, which is our private member community. If you're interested in joining that, look at the description below for details. Doug, first, this viewer or this member is curious about your thoughts on artificial intelligence and asking if you have any experience or involvement with it, especially with some of these new tools that have come out, this ChatGPT tool, for instance.
Yeah, well, as far as practical applications of it, that would affect me very directly as somebody who writes things. What you sent me the other day, where you basically give it some clues and ask it a question and it writes stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And as you pointed out, what we've seen that it can do is only a tiny fraction of what those guys out there have and haven't released.
Now, let me explain real quick what we did, what I sent to you so people know. I took a little synopsis. I took some of the transcription of one of the podcasts that Doug and I did. And because this system is limited and I can only put a certain number of character count into it, I had to basically just randomly take pieces of the podcast and put them in there. And it wasn't many. I mean, it wasn't many words that I could fit in there, and asked it to summarize the podcast and what the major takeaways of the conversation were, and what's an SEO friendly YouTube description. And the descriptions of it are very accurate. They're excellent summaries of the conversation. It's surprising. It would take me personally, and I was on the podcast with you, much longer. It would take me a long time to come up with summaries that are as good as what this did in about 4 seconds.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. So I don't think there's any question about the fact that artificial intelligence is going to change the world. And, it's funny because for years, I've been very cognizant of the fact that things are happening now that are really big deals. I mean, look, 50 or 100 years ago, the airplane developed, really big deal. Marconi's radio, really big deal. Television, really big deals. But these are even bigger deals. And what are they? We're obviously getting into practical space travel from a number of points of view, especially with private companies doing it, which means it'll actually happen as opposed to just be, government-sponsored science experiments. That's huge. Well, it's like what Timothy Leary said decades ago. He promoted the idea of SMILE, space migration, intelligence increase, life extension. And so progress is being made in all of those things. But then you add in robotics. I mean, we've seen the machines that Boston Dynamics has, but I haven't seen anything that's advanced beyond their big dog and so forth. But you tie in a big dog with really smart artificial intelligence and perhaps tiny little quantum computers, you're looking at the world of the Terminator if Skynet gets out of control. And of course, biological development, where we're clearly going to have human type robots that have artificial intelligence, but are perfectly, this is what Ray Kurzweil is talking about when he refers to the singularity. And artificial intelligence is going to put it all on steroids because it'll happen much more quickly than it would otherwise. And so I'm just wondering to what degree kids in their garage are going to be able to put together artificial intelligence programs, or is it like kids in the garage are unlikely to put together nuclear fusion or even nuclear fission? Can they do that with artificial intelligence?
Well, I think this is the key. I think the big question with all of these technologies you mentioned, the way that they will affect our future depends upon whether they are centralized technologies or decentralized technologies. I mean, it's a dystopian nightmare if they're centralized, as far as I'm concerned. If some of them can get out and be decentralized, on the other hand, it'll be chaotic, but it could be amazing. And I will say for these AI applications as they are, they're designed for businesses. I mean, they've designed it for commercial purposes, for instance, to be able to automate customer service through these things. And so they're built with what they call APIs, where you can build software applications that integrate directly with it. So essentially that's like this ChatGPT 3 is like a base layer, and then you can write software on top of it. So it's meant to be used by other parties. But of course, the juiciest, maybe the most interesting or most powerful stuff, it'll still be controlled by, ultimately the owner of the company. And it can be used for weird things. Like they did this exercise. They said, so imagine I'm a software developer for Twitter, and I was supposed to be working, for this week on several projects. Tell me, what were the things I should have, if I'm going to send a report to Elon telling him what I got done this week, what are the projects I should tell him I was working on? And then it gave him a list. Okay. It gave him a list of those topics. And then it said, write me the code I would have written for those. And it wrote the code. That's where it is now. That's amazing.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I think you really put your finger on it. It's a question of whether it's centralized and all controlled by the government, which really means these various 3-letter and 4-letter agencies, each of which are compartmentalized and have their own interests, working against each other as much as they're working for the government, whoever that is, or whether it's going to be done by entrepreneurs. And by that, I don't mean these big corporations, which are just running dogs of these agencies, but they've got all the capital that is so that is so critical to get the equipment and all the rest of this type of thing.
Well, it is for a lot of it, but I think there's some things that, like if you can get basically the things to do, like gene editing, for instance, if that could be decentralized and garage entrepreneurs can work on it because the devices, although maybe not as advanced, could be done out of a garage, then I'm not as worried about all the crazy stuff that's going on with gene editing right now. Same thing if, although it would be more chaotic, I think it would be a better outcome. Same thing for this AI stuff. And I think the good thing about code, and you're leveraging the information sphere to be able to innovate, is that it is not capital intensive once the technology breakthroughs are kind of released into the wild.
Yeah, I guess there's really cause for optimism more than pessimism when it comes to this. And looking at this from a historical point of view, gunpowder, it was a bad thing for the common man because the powers that be had it first and gave them more power to control the plebs and the peasants. But then the cat got out of the bag, and pretty soon the peasants were able to take down our armored knights with a gun. So it turned the tables on them. And the same thing with the printing press, which just the upper classes had to start with, but then it blossomed. And so yeah, same thing I expect is going to happen, but it'll be scary along the way.
No doubt about that. In the meantime, it's very interesting. It's worth watching. It's worth going to set up a free account and just see how it works. Test it out for yourself. If nothing else, it's better than Google for sure. If you have a question, you're looking for something, you'll get better search results by asking a question in this GTP engine than you would on Google for sure. So, okay. Next question, Doug. So what's your take on fiat and the US dollar in particular? On the one hand, we see that US dollars is currently losing strength, with the BRICS and other countries seeming to be in negotiations agreements to go off the petrodollar. Let's see, I'm trying to summarize this question well. So on the other hand, if there's a massive downturn in the global economy, at least in the past, the USD was always seen as a safe haven, and so it would strengthen. So the question is, basically, if you have some cash on the sideline in fiat that you want to hold and be able to invest when assets are cheap, what fiat would you mostly go into, if at all? He says he currently holds the euro, the Swiss franc, US dollar, and some gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
Yeah, gold, silver, and Bitcoin for sure. I mean, I think that's where most of your cash equivalents should be, in those areas, not in various fiat currencies. And of course, the dollar has always been the go-to place because the US in the past had by far the greatest amount of industrial might and military might, and the world's financial system revolved around New York. So there were lots of reasons why. But the dollar is being actively destroyed at this point. And what happened with the Russians was, I hate to use the hackneyed phrase, it was a wake-up bell for the rest of the world, where they say, if we own dollars, we may not own anything, because all those dollars clear through New York. And even if we have cash in giant pallets, the type of thing that the Americans shipped to Afghanistan and Iraq to do whatever the hell they were going to do with pallets of $100 bills. I mean, tomorrow morning, the US government could say, no, these things aren't good anymore. You can turn in the old ones and tell us exactly where they came from, and maybe we'll redeem them. So the dollar's on its way out. It ain't like it used to be, I think. It's not like there'll be a panic into the dollar, but on the other hand, all the debt in the world, most of the debt in the world is in dollars also. But maybe people will default on their debts. I mean, I've wondered for years, at what point third world countries that have giant debts in US dollars will simply say, you know what, we're going to default on it for all kinds of reasons they can come up with. So the whole system is unstable. I guess if you want a fiat currency to answer the question, I'd probably choose the Swiss franc, but maybe I'd choose the UAE's dirham. Maybe. It's a financial center. There's no reason for anybody to hate them in particular. I mean, their prosperity is built upon being reliable and trustworthy. So if you must, you can bank and save in their currency. And Switzerland's still okay.
Okay, good. All right, next question. Doug, it looks like the vaccine data is starting to come out. What impact do you think it'll have on the drug companies and the politicians that endorsed it?
Yeah, you know, I'm of two minds about these drug companies. On the one hand, they're responsible for developing all kinds of wonderful substances that actually save your life and keep you from getting sick and cure sicknesses and so forth. So it's not like it's all evil big pharma. I mean, they actually do things, but you know, the problem with all of these big corporations, and it's not just big pharma, it's that at this point, I don't think any of them are run by founding entrepreneurs anymore that are really interested in the science and creating things. They're run by financial types. They're run by suits. Yep. And, you know, and these people get tied up with the wrong kind of people in government. So there really is. I mean, Eisenhower pointed it out, 70 years ago? There really is a military industrial complex. And industry has expanded to the pharma companies and the computer companies and so forth. And they're all tied up with not just the military, but all these agencies, which are just as dangerous as the military. So getting back to the pharma companies in particular, they're really not to be trusted. And this whole misadventure with COVID, I think, has proved that. They're totally not to be trusted.
So do you think will there be any accountability now that there's so much information now, seemingly all at once coming out? All these doctors who did nothing for years are all of a sudden coming out and talking about it. You know, they sit on the sidelines like, you know, forever. And then now it's safe, and they're all coming out and talking about the risks of it all. And so it's clear, the coast is clear in their minds. So these brave heroes are now finally coming out after they destroyed humanity, whatever, they're coming out now. Do you think there's going to be consequences now that this information is coming out, that, you know, there were clearly cover-ups that were being done? I mean, I don't know if I sent it to you, but there was Project Veritas has this this leak that came from a Marine major who worked on a special assignment to DARPA, and he went through and he had access to all the government records, through DARPA, about the source of it. And he, I guess it was in halfway through 2021, he sent a letter to the Inspector General and to the Defense Department about it, just that, like, what it was coming from, and that there were treatments for it, and that exactly identifying all of it. And that was done a long time ago. No one cared, but it came public now. That's public.
Yeah, you did send that, and I started to read it, but it was 20 pages, and idiotically, at least it seems to me it was idiotic, Veritas printed their name
All over
in
it.
big letters across it, which was really distracting trying to read it around their
watermark. Their watermark was so
I
absurd.
mean, it's kind of counterintuitive that they would make information they're trying to get out hard to read for.
Yeah, I agree.
Can we post that for people that?
Yeah, I'll get that. I'll post it for people. But I do think people should read it, because what you see is that this happened last year, middle of the year. Everyone knew where it all came from. It was very clearly identified. I mean, it went to the Inspector General even about it, and nobody cares, I guess.
Yeah, the question is, can they get away with it? Because this is one of the biggest scandals actually in world history. Yeah. Most broad-based, widespread scandals with consequences, which are just starting to come out there. I mean, I think we're still at the beginning of this.
And the health scandals are only part of it. The economic damage that was done from this. I mean, it's like the damage to the mental health of kids from, being masked and isolated. Like it's untold damage.
It amazes me that Watergate is looked on as being such a big deal when it was nothing. It was, just some guys getting together. Hey, let's find out what the Democrats are doing. And we can find out. We'll break in there and get their papers and see what their plans are. I mean, this is nothing. These people kill each other and have black ops and ferry people off to hidden black sites, and Watergate becomes a big deal, and it was a nothing thing. And then, like, Clinton has a dalliance with Monica Lewinsky. I mean, who cares? And so he lied. Well, of course they all lie. Yeah. And so this became a major scam. But this thing, I mean, yep. It's quite amazing.
I almost think that all the little scandals in a way are designed to, suck the energy out of major scandals. I mean, one of the things that was, became clarified last week, what a lot of people suspected was the CIA's involvement in the assassination of Kennedy, which a lot of people thought that already, but it was, kind of confirmed from an insider, I guess, that did in fact happen. And again, no one cares. It doesn't make any difference at this point. I guess they dragged it out for 60 years, so it's fine. But even that, they're more concerned with these, whether or not you use the right words, whether or not you're getting good representation on your board of directors or whatever. Those things are the scandals of the day, whereas these crazy corruption things that really destroy the world are ignored.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Well, I don't know how it's all going to end. Of course, it's long been said, a lie can spread around the world before truth even gets its shoes on. Yeah. And that's true. But, I got a feeling that in the end, it's going to come out. It's going to unravel. There's a series that I've been watching at night, because I don't like to work per se at night.
Yeah, wind down.
I've been watching the series that I got involved in called Shooter, because of course we're both interested in guns. And this show is, well, of course it's a pay into the Marine Corps, who I'm sure must have, shoveled millions of dollars at them to, make them even more heroic than anybody can imagine. That's not the point. The point is this show called Shooter, I don't know who the star is. It's nobody I knew. But now that I've gotten into the third series of it, he's gotten into uncovering. And of course, almost every episode he kills somebody. I mean, the hero of this has a body count of, well, they acknowledge in the show well, at least 390 that are official, but just in the show, which is unofficial, he has 50, 60, 100 or something like that. Just, going around and killing people for good.
Well, it is called shooter. If he
Yeah,
doesn't
he's a
shoot,
shooter. Yeah, exactly. But he generally kills the right people, I gotta say. I mean,
okay, good.
his general radar as to where to point the gun is pretty good. But in this show, relating to what we're talking about now, he's uncovering a sinister organization that resembles the deep state, actually, but it's informal, like the deep state is.
Yep.
And it's worth tuning into, actually. His name is Joe Bob Swagger or something
That's
like
right.
that.
Yeah, I think I looked up the actor's name is Ryan Felipe. Ryan Felipe.
Anyway,
Okay.
yeah, it's got all kinds of continuity errors and all kinds of things that I said, wait a minute, that can't happen. That's factually inaccurate. Well, you got to skate over that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's about being entertained, Doug. Come on, you're trying to find something to entertain yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's entertainment.
Okay, so here's,
Anyway,
I guess
the deep state exists, and they're bad guys, and they're, these people, the rich and powerful that get together at the World Economic Forum and Bilderberg and Bohemian Grove and even the Council on Foreign Relations, all these groups. I mean, they're the elite. These parasites are the elite, and they hate the common man. And, the plebs on the bottom, well, if they're quiet, they'll be left alone. It's the middle class that does some independent thinking and has some independent wealth. So it's like a different type of civil war is actually being conducted before our very eyes.
Interesting. What do you think? Do you think anybody though from this is there going to be is the deep state going to have to put up a scapegoat, put up somebody or a couple people to take some of the blame for all this that happened? I thought over a year ago, it seemed like Fauci would end up getting in trouble for it just because he was so out front as the face on it. And he was so in the face of facts that certainly went away from his side. He was still saying whatever he had to say. So I was thinking maybe he might be a scapegoat later. I don't know.
Maybe I've been reading too many conspiratorial novels at this point, but if things got really serious, of course, Fauci is 80, but he's a very well-preserved 80. I got to say that at some point when they can't cover it up anymore, he knows so much that he's got to join the ranks of the departed. He really does.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll find some way to take him out. And the same thing with that little scumbag, sham bank fraud.
Damn Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, whatever his name is.
Bankman-Fried.
Yeah, I gotta believe he's a dead man walking too. He may be out on what was it, $250 million bond
that he had to sign for, but he didn't have to put up any. He didn't give them. He signed for it as a signature bond.
That's amazing. And only a week before it was all he's on a platform with who? Janet Yellen, and was at the head of the Federal Reserve and some other scumbag asshole. Remember that they had a
no, was that New York? Is that New York Times thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember who else was on it, but yeah, she was for sure. Either way, I know Mark Zuckerberg was there. And I think that Zelensky might have been there by video conference.
Of course. That's just amazing. So I wonder if sham bank fraud, wore his standard, grungy T-shirt and basketball shorts to that particular meeting or not.
Well, it was all live stream, so he probably was. He wasn't there in person.
Oh yeah. Well, of course, Zelensky was wearing his tough guy uniform.
Of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like anytime you're trying to. Well, I mean, listen, these are all characters. It's like it seems like they're all. To me, I feel like a lot of them are playing a role, and so it's a lot easier to play the role if the bad guy is always wearing a bad guy uniform. Like Cobra Commander kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he does that. All right, let's see.
Well, this is all reality is starting to resemble a novel where somebody just lets their imagination run wild before he puts it on paper. It's really
Yes,
starting to look like it.
it's like the world is created from like you have several different people with your philosophy about maybe the way the world works, all coming together at once. And so they're crossing paths, you know, where the solipsist, where the world is basically created by your mind. So if you imagine like a dozen people with their most crazy versions of it all mashing together, this is what we have.
Yeah, curiouser and curiouser. Can't wait
All
to
right.
see what happens, actually.
It's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Aside from placing hedged investments to minimize the throes of a collapsing dollar, there is an opportunity for positioning new business to leverage the situation. Let's see, what small business ideas do you see as having the most promise going forward with rising fuel prices and talks of shortages? He says, I think maybe alternative energy producers could be of value, or maybe even like producing things like wood gasifiers or things like that as a small business. Do you have any thoughts on potential small businesses that might work in the coming years?
Yeah, well, look, I like the idea of small businesses and niches. Like, here in Uruguay, we grow on this farm, we grow cattle and soybeans and timber. These are all commodities. These are stupid businesses to be in from a point of view because you really have no marginal advantage. Small, guy like me. I mean, none at all. Totally if I was smart and took this seriously, I'd do what our friend in the Cayman Islands does. He doesn't try to grow commodity type stuff. He has greenhouses where he grows herbs and spices fresh in the Cayman Islands, where they're rich and can afford it and they're willing to pay for it. That's the kind of small business that you get into. It's got to be a niche where you have a marginal advantage and you're the only guy doing it. And once you start doing it, pretty unlikely anybody else is going to do it. So you got to figure something like that out, I think. And, I think it'd be great to figure out how to use more waste product from trees that are cut down and so forth. And but this is really asking at a basic level, are we going to advance rapidly to Ray Kurzweil's singularity when everything is in superabundance because the robots and biobots and artificial intelligence and God knows what are going to just create more stuff than we know how to even consume. So are things going to be better than we can imagine? Or are these people going to screw things up so badly that we gradually or quickly descend into something like a dark age? I mean, but it doesn't matter what happens, having the most skills that you possibly can get, like learning how to, make stills from wood chippings, I guess he was talking about, and
Gas fires, yep.
small niche businesses that, people want, but, some giant corporation isn't going to bother going after that small. I think it's a great idea. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think there's, if you look at, I think that people are, one of the big trends that seems to be happening is, scarcity of energy or risks of inconsistent energy supply. That seems, I don't think that is going to be decreasing over the next 5 years. Doesn't seem like it anyway, because of the crazy investments in the grid and stuff. And with what's happened throughout a lot of North America over the last year or last week, where people are freezing on the streets of Buffalo, which Buffalo has snow all the time. It was weird that they're finding dead bodies, in Buffalo, or people are dying in their cars. But anyway, so if people are
why
not,
do things break down so badly there? Because it always snows in Buffalo. It's like the snow capital of.
yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. There's no reason for it. I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough to understand what specifically went wrong there, but I do think there's like well, I would say a lot of the problem is that people are very bad at preparing for the future, whether that future is a week away or that future is a year away. People are living like moment to moment without much thought. And they're living under the basic normalcy bias, which, hey, it always snows in Buffalo. We've always been fine. No need for me to have to worry. I'm still going to drive home through it, or I'm still going to, sleep on the streets or whatever. So I think it's human psychology is the problem rather than a system failure. But in terms of the system failures we'll be having and continue to have, I think people are becoming more aware that they need to probably own more of their energy production. So like, if I lived in the Northeast, for instance, I mean, I would, and I was looking for a business to start, I'd probably start a wood stove business where I'm, going to people, homeowners, and installing these really great wood stoves in people's houses that are very expensive. I'd go for only the high end and, learn how to get a couple crews together and deliver those. So I think people are going to want that. They want alternative heating methods, and like, wood stoves are the easiest way to get it. So I think that's a business I think if someone can make a really nice business out of, if they attack the realization that people have now, which is that sometimes the heat doesn't work. And so what are we going to do? How are we going to make sure? And maybe we can offset the cost of the fuel oil prices that they use, or the propane prices, which they haven't been too bad, but that's my thought.
Yeah, that absolutely makes a lot of sense. But in that context, it doesn't make sense, I think, to live in a city,
That's for sure.
because you are totally at the effect of what somebody else is causing. I mean, you're not going to have a wood stove in your high rise.
You
Forget
can't.
about it. Either the electricity comes on or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, you're going to be really cold.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, city is the fullest manifestation of centralization possible, right?
Yeah.
And centralization is the great, like, exposes you to incredible risk. There's not enough redundancy. So your building could lose power and that's it. It doesn't matter what else you do, or you can't even do anything to prepare for it. Not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Cities are absolutely wonderful for all kinds of things. But frankly, they only really work in a capitalist free market system. They're suboptimal and dangerous when everybody isn't individually motivated to do his job.
Right.
And the socialist style system, well, you're not too motivated. You can't be fired. Your paycheck's going to come in. The government will do it. I mean, it's lack of responsibility. But in today's world, yeah, I'd move away from the city, get out in the country if you possibly can.
Definitely. Okay. Doug, years ago, I got invited to Argentina by the Casey organization, but I could not go. I've always regretted it that I missed that opportunity. Would you guys consider doing a file meeting in Uruguay one day? I would definitely come.
I don't know, Matt. What do you think? I mean,
maybe we could talk to, I was thinking maybe I'll talk to Fede about it. If his organization could kind of help facilitate it, it could work.
could be fun.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll see.
I mean,
Think about it.
yeah, very few people go to Uruguay, and I mean, there's a lot of fun places that if you want to transplant, you can transplant to in the world. But Uruguay is probably one of the best, at least now.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'll look into it a little bit. I'll think about it.
I mean, I like to meet new people, even though on the other hand, I'm not a social butterfly. So I'm of two minds.
Well, we've got some good filtering mechanisms, so I'm sure the group that would come here would be good. So Doug, do you have any crazy stories from traveling? Any sudden danger or something rare that happened? Any stories that stand out for you?
I've actually been asked that before, and I've thought about it. And the fact of the matter is, in all the crazy places that I've been, and all the stupid things that I've done in crazy places, I've lived a charmed life. Nobody has ever pointed a gun at me or a knife with intent to kill or even intimidate. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, this is pretty amazing. I mean, could it have happened? Yeah, I mean, you turn right instead of turning left and you meet the wrong characters and bad shit can happen. But yeah, I can see where things could have gotten out of control, but they never have. So I've really been lucky. Now, why is that? Why have I been peculiarly lucky at times when things could have gone wrong? Hmm. Well, we can all speculate as to why, but the dangers that I've been in have mostly been things that I've put myself in voluntarily, and I've got to say, stupidly.
Like what?
So,
What's an example of one of those?
God, I mean, look, there's so many of these things. Like when I was actively scuba diving, I mean, I, I was cave diving for a period of time when I was on a treasure hunting expedition, actually. So a bunch of us that were on this expedition together, that was all stupid and crazy too. I mean, we just don't realize. Look, young unmarried males just naturally take risks, and they don't even understand the risks they're taking. So look, I mean, when I think back on some of these things, it sends shivers up my spine. I mean, I even hate to tell. How could he have been that stupid? If I tell the story of
Okay.
bouncing the bottom in a 100-foot cave, and doing so, stuff like that, and other cave diving is absolutely one of the most dangerous things that you can do. And I skydived for years, well, several years, and I have 59 jumps, which is a reasonable number.
Yeah.
And to this day, realizing that I am not as detail oriented, precise with things as I should have been. I was packing my own chute this whole time. You have to. And I said, wait a minute, maybe I
I'm not the
should.
guy to do this job.
Yeah, that's right. Well, of course, you always have a professional rigger pack an emergency chute in case you screw up on your main chute. But I've never had to cut away my main chute because it was that badly packed. And then you're falling again, and well, I'm
This works.
a backup system, you know. So I've been very, very lucky in all kinds of things. I mean, but the answer to the question is no. I figure I've lived a charmed life. How about you? How many stupid things have you done that should have killed you?
Oh, definitely not as much traveling, because I didn't start really traveling till I didn't really start traveling until I had kids. So I didn't do a lot of the really risky stuff that I did when I was younger. I mean, so to me, the most memorable things about traveling for me, all related to things that no one else would find interesting at all. It was being in a very unique place with very unique people, and I think about, like, I know I brought this up with you before, but when we were working on that Palau deal, and that day after meeting with President Johnson Torreon, and then we go out into that little bay outside of the hotel where they had the giant clams, and we're just scuba diving there. And it's like perfect day, amazing thing. And I'm like, holy shit, how lucky I am just to be here doing this right now.
We were so lucky because I remember when I was a little kid, they showed these black and white movies from the 30s where the little native boy is diving and gets his foot caught by a giant clam.
And they were there, like legitimately those clams. They're like 6 feet. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. No, that stuff is wonderful and memorable. But
Those are the big things for me.
I'll make an observation. It's that everybody thinks that you go to crazy and exotic places, that your odds are greater of something bad happening to you. Yeah, that's true. You go to Haiti today, which I've been to a lot, and it's actually really dangerous. I mean, it's factual that it's a good chance you're going to get kidnapped. Probably not killed, but certainly kidnapped there. So yeah, that's true. But within reasonable limits, there's no more danger in most of these countries than there is in the US. I mean, you walk into a bar in the US, and it could turn out that it's a biker bar where they're all drunk and you don't look so good to them. And, you know, bad things stuff like that can happen anywhere. It's not just over the next hill, there may be dragons, so I better stay here in my little village. It's.
Yeah, I agree. Just a little situational awareness goes a long way. Like I've been walking in certain places before and turned around. I'm like, yeah, this is not, I like to explore cities just by walking. Sometimes you notice you stumble into a neighborhood that's gotten all of a sudden dramatically worse, and you just turn around and you leave as soon as you realize that. So if you're paying attention, you can be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Doug, what conditions, political, economic, et cetera, are necessary for the broad U.S. stock market to decouple from the precious metals sector?
Well, historically, they've always said that gold and gold stocks are contracyclical to the market as a whole. And there's some truth to that. But at the same time, gold stocks are also stocks. And when things get bad, people don't want stocks of any kind. I don't know. It's a question of how crazy things could get. Are US banks going to become so unstable that the government figures they have to bail in the banks the way they did in Cyprus a few years ago? I mean, yeah, maybe. I mean, they're quite capable of doing that. So we're moving into a time that is really, I think, terra incognita. Property rights are not recognized. The state is overweening. There's all kinds of crazy things going on in the world, like our last conversation were the 8 trends that are really nasty and are ongoing. So very hard to answer that question. All I can say is that I think gold stocks are a really good speculation right now, even though it's the crappiest industry in the world, just about.
Okay. All right. Next question. This is from Daniel. He says, I'm considering Uruguay in my quest to find a peaceful retirement. I've read some information online about it, but I get a sense that it would not be, I don't get a sense that it would be more free than Texas. Do you feel that COVID mandates, central bank digital currency, travel restrictions, and other suppression is on the rise in Uruguay?
Well, you know, one of the problems that I have with Uruguay or any place in Latin America is I can kind of get by in Spanish, but yeah, I can get by. But the fact is, my French, which I learned many, many years ago, is still much better than my Spanish because it's just never, and Spanish is supposed to be the easiest language in the world to speak for an English speaker. So that's a problem for me. So from that point of view, yeah, I'd probably be better off in Texas because you got to be able to communicate with the people around you. And of course, people are your big danger anywhere, and communication is important. So I feel like an idiot not being able to speak fluent Spanish at this point. I mean, I have a new maid here at the house, and my Spanish is so bad, or maybe my situational awareness here at the house is so bad that she served me my breakfast of raw oats and blueberries, but there was no milk, which I always get. And I tried to explain it to her, I thought very clearly, and I couldn't make it clear. So she just took them away. And instead of getting my oats and blueberries back with milk, I got nothing back. So this is a problem with language. And it leads back to the question that you asked. In Texas, almost everybody, except for new Spanish-speaking migrants, of course, you can communicate with them, but you may not be able to communicate effectively with the locals in Uruguay or Argentina or Brazil or
That's a big,
wherever.
that's a big factor. That's a big factor, I think. And I think though, what do you think about the specific things we're just talking about with COVID mandates and central bank digital currency, travel restrictions? Do you think that the suppression of individual freedom will be greater in the US than it will be here in the coming years? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I think it's going to be less.
Yeah.
And the reason I believe that is because this is an agricultural society, number one, which changes the tenor of what people do and accept. And the government doesn't have nearly the kind of resources that the US government does. So they're just not in a position to focus on you. And, as let's say a reasonably well-to-do foreigner that keeps his nose clean, it's pretty easy to keep your nose clean in a place like this.
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to focus on you. So it's a double-edged sword. But on the other hand, being in a place like Texas, where if you're friends with the local sheriff and all that, like when I lived in Aspen, Colorado, I was friends with the local sheriff, and it was very helpful.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
but I think I have that here. We kind of have that here in Uruguay. There's the little local police station, the little precinct command center, if you want to call it that, just down the street from us. Like we stopped by again on Christmas and brought him a bottle of Jack, and like you walk in and there's like no one to be found anywhere, and then you go back and then there's a courtyard and there like one guy lounging in the back, and then there's a couple of people cooking you can smell, and so we had to like go around and try and find the cops to be able to give them their Christmas gift. Of course, they're very appreciative, and they know where we live, and they know us, and they know the history of our property and everyone around us, and it's definitely, I mean, this is a small town area, and most people know each other, and the cops do not, they treat you like they're, it's like their neighborhood foot patrol kind of, instead of, I mean, they aren't the police here are not, they're not law enforcement, I guess would be the best way to say it. I mean, they're just, it seems like they're administrators more than anything else.
yeah, I think you're right. The main danger you have here from the police in Uruguay is the traffic cops. They're not looking for bribes, as far as I can tell. It's a non-corrupt country, but
Well, specifically
you can't be, if they test you, it's a 0.00 tolerance, which is really insane, especially in a town like Punta, which is a resort town. I mean,
yeah, and it's not even, the traffic cops are not like normally, they're not pulling people over for speeding. They just set up checkpoints, basically, around, especially around this time of year when it's peak in season here. And, on the main arteries leaving Punta, that's where I've seen them. And yeah. I've gone through them 3 times and they've always waved me through. So just my luck, I guess. No, I mean, I wasn't drinking anyway, but.
Well, it shows you've got stupid people in government absolutely everywhere. So.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay. Doug, are you familiar with this guy named Ed Dowd? He's the author of a new book called Cause Unknown. And apparently he used to work for BlackRock. He was a former money manager for BlackRock. And, he's a person who first came out and talked about the insurance companies reporting, big increases in deaths or in claims. Are you familiar with this guy at all?
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with him. Don't know much about him, but yeah, I've heard of his book. I think it's doing well on Amazon. I don't know what the name of this book is.
It's called Cause Unknown.
Yeah. Yeah, this is wonderful that people are writing books like that, they're not just, weird guys that are living off in the Alaska woods. I mean, this is a guy that was involved in the financial markets and so forth. So
he's using his newfound popularity, I think, though, to launch a new hedge fund. I wonder what you think about that.
I have no idea what his economic or political philosophy, if any, is, other than the fact that he's pretty bold thank God, coming out with, this anti-vaccine book. And, generally, if he's anti-vaccines, I suspect he'd kind of be on our side more or less in most things, although I don't know.
Well, I think the basis, and maybe I'm biased here, but I think the basis of our side is that we have open eyes and we think. It's not really political.
No, it's not. You just have to be a free thinker that uses logic and looks at facts as opposed to rhetoric that you're fed by the media and the government.
Yeah, I don't know much about his fund. So whoever sent this in, if you want to forward me any information you might have about his fund, I'll take a look at it. Just offer you.
Yeah,
See what it
very
is.
interesting to know.
Okay, let's see.
His fund, I know what it was that I found out, and it caught my attention for obvious reasons. He calls it I think he calls it financial technologies, but financial spelled with a PH. And I thought I was the first person anywhere to spell financial with a PH because it's one of my 9 Ps. So
he does that too.
or did he pick that up and said, "Oh, that's pretty good. I'll use that." I don't know. But
yeah, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
All right. Doug, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk in terms of him being a true warrior against the hard left and the World Economic Forum agenda? Do you think he can do you think he can help disrupt the agenda, or is it wishful thinking?
I was on somebody's podcast probably a year ago, big podcast. And I don't know who the hell it was. I can't even remember, but it was a big podcast who had kind of a ideologically focused group of listeners. So he asked me, "Well, what do you think about Elon Musk?" Since I'd said, unkind things about the deep state and federal agencies and this type of thing. So he figured that I'd naturally be against Elon Musk. And in his mind, they went together. And I said, look, my view on Elon Musk is he's obviously a genuine genius in several areas. I mean, he's put together a space company that actually works. That's fantastic. And he's put together, I don't know if it's working well or not, this boring company, to drill through the earth to create tunnels. Totally separate area, great idea. And his Neuralink thing, well, this is kind of suspicious. I mean, you put a chip in your brain and then the bad guys control it and all that. Well, I don't know what's on his mind from that point of view. Certainly, I don't want to let Yuval Noah Harari or whatever his name is get anywhere near a technology like that. What's his fourth thing?
Tesla,
of course, the big one. Of course. This guy is a genius. Everything he touches turns to gold. And the fact that he took over Twitter, and I guess it's the fifth thing, and has fired most of their employees. Probably should fire all of them. Speaks well of him. The fact that he likes to reach out and say what's on his mind and so forth. I think from the deep state's point of view, although I'm sure he got money from these guys, they think they may have backed the wrong horse from some point of view. Oh, and that podcast that I was on, I got hundreds of nasty emails, not to me, but posted on the website saying, "Oh, this guy's obviously got the tentacles of the deep state are into him, blah, 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 blah. He's, if he likes Musk, you've got to watch him, don't have him back on." I mean, these people are so stupid. They just reflexively, they don't do any of them know him personally? No. But one of the things that I know about Musk that I like is the fact that he went through a stage when he was making a lot of money He bought 5 mega houses, one place or another, and he sold them all. And now he just lives in like a little tiny house someplace in Texas someplace.
Yep.
I
That's
think
right.
that's interesting. He doesn't need a big house, doesn't want one. It's just a place to sleep, and he can afford anything he wants. He can afford 1,000 of those things if he wants. I'm impressed. I'm impressed by that because he
Yeah, I
just
mean, it definitely has done a lot of things that no one else could do and or would do if they could do. And so certainly, like for instance, in a world where you look at the World Economic Forum and Harari, who talks about there being too many people on the world and on the earth, he has been outspoken about that we are facing a population bomb, like there's a population collapse, and so that encouraging people to have kids. So maybe it's a well orchestrated ruse, but at least him being out there promoting the exact opposite on the key concept that we need more people, not fewer people, is I think something that sets him apart from others. And as an executive running the company, when he steps into the things he did at Twitter, I mean, very few people would have the balls to do something like that. Because it's just not worth the heat at all anyway. And
Yeah.
even if you say, okay, well, he's doing it as an agent of deep state. Okay, but still firing 5,000 employees sucks. And he did that still, so if he's acting somehow as the agent of a state and doing that, or part of the conspiracy, as some people think, then he's still doing hard things, and it's entertaining and interesting. And I don't know, maybe everyone in the world is all bad, and it's just me and you, Doug, that are on the side of, we're not participating in the game, because everyone thinks that everyone's so quick to judge, oh, they're part of the cabal or they're not, and then they're always looking for any indication. How are you holding your hands when you were sitting down? Were you holding them in a position that might indicate you're a Mason? Okay, now we know you're part of the cabal, and it's all over. I mean, it's like people are just so reflexively looking for that, scrutinizing every move for it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's true. I don't know.
It might be. I mean, I don't know, but because he's created a lot of wealth and done a lot of things really well, I'm for Elon. Can you say this about Bezos? Yeah, he's obviously a genius too. That did something that's.
Yep.
But
But
he
I think
doesn't seem to. He doesn't seem. It seems like Bezos. I don't know. Just impression based on nothing. Is that Bezos? I don't know if he's attended the World Economic Forum or not. I don't know if Elon has, but I can't see Elon, being impressed by the kind of people that go there or really wanting to associate with them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the other thing is, I mean, these are both like really great entrepreneurs, but the thing that makes Elon stand out is that the work he's chosen to do is just so hard. Like he's picked the hardest thing someone could pick. It's not like Mark Zuckerberg, building software. I'm not saying that everyone could do it, but building Facebook is not building a car company. I mean, it's just not, or launching rockets into space. I mean, it's just, these are very, very hard, real physical atom challenges versus, ones and zeros challenges. And Bezos did do some of that too, because working out the distribution of being able to get, whatever you want to your house the same day in many cases. I mean, it's a miracle. It's actually a miracle. It's an engineering marvel. I mean, a free market that it can happen. It really is. I'm not saying, too much consumerism is bad, but whatever. It's nice to be able to get it. Okay, I think that's really all the questions I had, Doug, unless, I don't know if you want to talk about, but we got, there's some feedback we got from somebody about the carbon credit stuff and the ethics of investing. Do you want to discuss that now, or would you like to do that another time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. We talked about that, not the last time, but the time before that, was it?
Yep.
Yeah, so this person wrote in and said that, I must be so money oriented that I would invest in carbon credits, even though I think it's a scam and so forth. Well, of course, it is a scam and it's ridiculous, but the market, and probably in the back of his mind, he's probably heard about what Lenin said. Yeah, these capitalists, they'll sell us the ropes that we use to hang them. And well, we'll only sell them the ropes that they try to use to hang them if they sell us something that we need, but they can't produce anything that we need. And we might use it to hang them. So but this is you know, this is just like, you know, I'm sure he's a very nice guy because he's one of our file members, but saying that I must be terminally money oriented because I invest in carbon credits because I can make money, it's really rather stupid thing to say. Does that mean that if I went short carbon credit company, that I'm going to damage it in any way? The answer is no.
Yeah.
Going long, going short. I mean, how about buying shares of Raytheon or General Dynamics?
Right. This is what point I made with him is like, you know, Raytheon has, I think we can demonstrate that they're responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocents. Seems like there's a bigger moral quandary with investing in Raytheon than there would be with investing in something which I think is bad, but carbon credits.
Well, and supposing, let's turn that thing around. If investing in them is bad, giving them money in effect, well, maybe you should short their stock instead, but you'll have no effect at all on anything. And talk about stupidity. This is like these green people, ESG people that believe in investing in something because it's
Ideologically sound.
Ideologically sound, and they're losing their asses. And
Yeah.
This is the same thing. I mean, you've got to have capital in order to use it to destroy these people. So this is all backwards. I mean, it's not clear thinking on this person's part.
Yeah. The thing I think that his reflexive response, that a part that I definitely agree with, is that, you know, there's something wrong with a lot of things that are happening. And, you know, and it does seem that people have not clearly drawn lines about what they will do and what they won't do. And you, like, for instance, you see the celebrities that get bought off to endorse vaccines. You know what I mean? They're like, they'll take the check and it's fine. And they don't even think about it. Or all the people who took money for FTX and didn't do any due diligence. I mean, these people whose brand's worth a lot, like Kevin O'Leary, I mean, just sold his soul, basically, as far as I'm concerned, you know, for money, because he wouldn't, like, I think a lot of people are craving people who will just say no to, like have some dignity over the dollar. And I think that I get that completely. I get that, but that's not the question here. I think it does apply in other areas.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, you know, I always enjoyed watching Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank, but I don't think he really deals in moral issues.
Oh.
Whether it's right, I don't think he considers that to start with. And anyway, the way I see carbon credits, it's like it's a trading sardine, not an eating sardine. It's like that old joke. I don't know if everybody's heard it or not. It's like there was a mania on in sardines futures at one point. So a guy calls his broker up and says, buy me some of those sardine futures. And he does. The market crashes and he falls back to plan B. Okay, I lost all my money, but I still got the contract to sardine futures. So the broker, you know, brings a semi up to his front yard and dumps the sardines there and puts them in his garage. It's okay, I got a lifetime supply of sardines that I bought. He starts eating them and they're inedible. They're just crap fish. So he calls his broker and says, I can't eat these sardines. He says, well, there's several contracts and you should have bought the eating sardines. Those were the trading sardines.
Right. And these are the trading sardines.
Yeah, they are.
And the thing is that the bottom line is that they're, you know, you don't have to, and we do not like the idea that the government is mandating these stupid policies that are going to make it impossible for industry to operate, or maybe even people to move without some carbon offsets. Like they're going to make it legally impossible for businesses to continue, from car manufacturers to, you know, steel producers and everything else, without being able to offset carbon. So because they're doing that, those businesses will have to shut down and deny the goods and services we need to survive. And we disagree with it. And we should get rid of those politicians that are enacting the policies, of course. But the good thing about these carbon credits is that they actually provide a legal loophole for these companies to at least continue to produce. They would be out of business if they don't have this legal loophole. Am I missing that? Is that right?
Almost everything the government does, with very few exceptions, is just stupid and counterproductive. And people still support the government, and they palaver with each other about what the government should do. Entirely the wrong question. Question is, why does the government exist? I mean, how do we get rid of it? Those are the questions that people should be asking, instead of stupidly, who should run the government? Wrong question. What should the government do? Wrong question. You know, so the situation is pretty hopeless. I mean, you almost can't turn it around at this point. It's all got to reset, to use the Schwabenklaus's phrase.
You're not wrong about everything.
Reset in a different way than the Schwabenklaus does.
Yeah, definitely. Very different. Okay. Well, great. We'll leave it there, Doug. Thank you very much. You have a great weekend and Happy New Year.
Thanks, Matt. It's a beautiful weekend here in Uruguay. So Happy New Year too.
Okay.